Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lower Makefield Township Board of Supervisors meeting. Today is December 6th, 2023. I call this meeting to order and would ask that you all join with me, and if you can rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Agenda item number 3, roll call. John, are you here?
Present.
James?
Here.
Dan?
Here.
Colin?
Present.
Thank you. And I'm here, so all 5 of us are present. Now we're on to community announcement, and this is an opportunity for youth organizations or residents to call in with different special announcements that they have. I will say thank you to Cub Scout Pack 95, because they once again will be collecting broken string Christmas lights or any kind of string lights from December 1st to January 10th. You can drop them off at Big Oak Sitco at 8112 Big Oak Road. So thank you to Big Oak as well for participating in that. And then James, did you have something?
I did. Yeah. Just want to make everyone aware. Toys for Tots is lacking in donations this year. So if you have an opportunity to get out and drop something off, I think we have a reception box here at the police station, Chief.
In the police station lobby, we do. We have a box, and you're welcome to come in anytime during business hours and drop that off.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think there's one at Commonplace Reader in the borough. And that also reminds me that there's a fine organization called PensburyKids.org. And apparently a lot of the students at Pensbury who often get gift cards from various charitable organizations so they can buy presents for their family, big hit to that budget as well. So if you're able to contribute to PensburyKids.org, they are also looking to make the holidays a little brighter for our Pensbury students. Did you have something else? No? Anybody? Anybody online? Nope, hearing none. Then we're on to agenda item number 5, consider approval of the minutes from October 25th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by James, seconded by John. Any discussion by the board? Any public discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Agenda item number 6, consider approval of minutes for November 1st, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by James, seconded by Dan. Any discussion by the board? Any public discussion? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Agenda item number 7, consider approval of minutes for November 8th, 2023, the budget meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by James, seconded by John. Any discussion from the board? Any public discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion Motion passes 5-0. Little delay down there. Agenda item number 8, consider approval of minutes for November 15th, 2023.
So moved.
Motion made by James, seconded by Dan. Any discussion from the board? Any public comment? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. Agenda item number 9, consider approval of minutes for November 20th, 2023, another budget meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by James, seconded by John. Any discussion from the board? Any public comment? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Agenda item number 10, fire services. Come on up. Thank you so much.
Was this approved previously?
Do we want to let Tim speak first? Do we want to put a motion on the table for
Yeah.
A? Yeah, why don't you start off with the presentation and then we'll take it from there. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so agenda number A is just consideration for the ordinance that was advertised for the fire loss insurance escrow. So any fire losses within the township building There will be an escrow set up for any costs for the township they have to take on of securing the building or anything like that. So many other municipalities have had it. So it's something that we should put in to help us offset costs if we have to do something.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the ordinance providing that in certain fire losses, the insurance company, association, or exchange shall transfer insurance proceeds to Lower Makefield Township to be held as security against the total cost of removing, repairing, or securing the damaged buildings.
Second.
Motion made by Dan, seconded by John. Any discussion from the supervisors?
This has already been advertised, so we've kind of vetted it. No one has any changes, or this is the next step in getting it on the book.
Any public comment? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
carries 5-0. B,
Agenda item B, it's the false fire alarm ordinance. So we talked about this last meeting. It has been advertised. This is really to target the homeowners and business owners who have a known problem with their protective systems and do not take the necessary steps to repair and replace the components, causing the competitive or conductive dispatch of the fire service. Fees will be in the fee schedule that is adopted in December of every year. And they will be accordingly to offset between homeowners and business owners. So
is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve an ordinance providing for penalties for false fire alarms caused by faulty fire detection alarm equipment or negligence.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made by John, seconded by Dan. Any discussion from the board?
Just real quick, I think that there was a little bit of discussion around whether this included emergency calls for like health emergency calls. This isn't really targeted.
no, I know there was a question before. I know Colin
Yeah.
and myself and Dave reworded that so it's more
Perfect.
clear and all that is out. It just strictly says for a fire alarm. Yes.
So thank you.
You have anything, Colin? No?
No, I just want to thank you for making those adjustments.
Excellent. Thank you. So again, as with the other earlier motion, this has been discussed and this is really just following up on the process. Any public comment? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. C,
Item number C. So I'm asking for consideration to advertise the ordinance regarding the fireworks. We talked about this last meeting, and there were some questions about model rockets. So I looked into that, and I did not realize that they are broken down into 3 different classes of model rockets, which is interesting. When I wrote modified the ordinance, I specifically put in there that this does not include the Class 1 model rockets. Class 2 and Class 3 are regulated by the FAA, and that's a whole different ballgame. So we don't have to worry about that. Also with this ordinance, I did the consumer fireworks a little bit. It's not stipulating you cannot use them in the township. It's just stipulating to follow the Pennsylvania law that they adopted in 2022 about consumer fireworks. It's about the age, where you can use them, how you shoot them off, and then it limits time that you can use them. You can use consumer fireworks. So anytime after 10 p.m. and before 7 a.m., they're not allowed to be shot off, with the exception of New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, July 4th, and that. Display fireworks, which are a lot bigger, this ordinance requires permits to the township, which requires insurance from them, a layout from them, a diagram, what they're using, so forth and so on. So if any of that happens, there will be a permit submitted through our OpenGov. Myself will approve it. I'll forward it to the police department. The building code official will have it as well, so we can approve it or deny it. So I think that kind of answered the model rocket question. Is that okay?
I would like to move that we authorize to advertise an ordinance regulating the use and display of fireworks within Lower Makefield Township.
there a second?
Second.
Motion
Yeah.
made by John, seconded by James.
And I would like to thank the Fire Services Director for his research on that matter and making Lower Makefield safe for model rocketry for years to come.
No problem. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, just to clear, this doesn't apply to the sale of fireworks, as that's regulated by the state, correct?
That is regulated by the state. Yes. Mhm.
Or just future science fairs where we.
Colin, anything? You good?
Yeah, I did have one question related to the permitting. So your letter just, covering what's in the ordinance. It does not mention that for display fireworks, the individual applying for the permit needs to have a fire safety plan. I presume that doesn't have to be in the ordinance, but that's something that we can require as part of the permitting process, just for them to say that they've thought about the fact that they could cause a fire and they're prepared to address it.
Yes, actually, I can enforce that through the fire code that's adopted by ordinance through the township. So when they go and apply on our OpenGov website, there are required documents they have to submit, and that is one of them. So yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Right. With that, we're on to agenda item 11, engineers report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the board tonight, we have 3 items on the engineers report section. The first of which is for the South Drive culvert replacement project. Consideration for payment certificate number 3. If you recall, at the last meeting, we had some items that were a change to the contract, change order number 2, which was approved. This payment includes those items as well as other construction items completed to date. The project's substantially complete at this point. There's a couple of final record documents and closeout items that would be anticipated with the project closeout final payment. So for tonight, it's payment number 3. The amount for this payment certificate is $117,297.26.
There a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve payment certificate number 3 for the South Drive culvert replacement project in the amount of $117,297.26.
Second.
Motion made by John, seconded by James. Any discussion from the board? Dan?
The usual question. As part of this, you've conducted all inspections and reviewed their invoices, and you're at the point where you're comfortable saying they're okay to be paid.
Absolutely, yes.
And the second usual question is, how much is the holdback?
The remaining amount after this payment for the contract, as mentioned, it's expected to be the final payment. It would be $39,792.47.
Thank you. Any other board questions, comments? Any public comment? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. B.
Thank you. Item B, it's consideration for a proposal for engineering services from our firm for the Taylorsville Road and Woodside Road Trail connection. As most folks know, the Woodside Road Trail comes down to Taylorsville, which is a PennDOT roadway. That intersection, the intention has always been for the trail to cross that road in a safe manner to connect with the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission Trail on the other side and kind of continue from there. So it was started to be looked at as part of the Woodside Road Trail. One of the items that PennDOT required to move forward with any kind of permitting was the final as-built and plans from the Joint Toll Bridge Commission, which was received just a few months ago in August. So now we have kind of the full scope and design schedule to move forward with pursuing that permitting with PennDOT and making that connection happen going into 2024. This proposal would be for the design from the initial testing phase of traffic testing and accumulation of the calculations needed all the way through to the construction and inspection of the work to be done.
Is there a motion?
No, so moved. Sorry.
I'll second for discussion.
Motion made by Dan, seconded by John.
You met with the Delaware Joint Toll Bridge Commission end of last month, right?
It was the very end of the summer, so it was August of this year.
And have we collectively agreed on how we would cross Taylorsville Road then? Design wise or no?
It would be at this point, because it's a PennDOT road with the permitting that they have to put their final stamp on, we would approach our design to them. Obviously, they would have, some feedback or comments typically with their HOP and their signal permits, which we would, kind of follow their lead of what they wanted through their intersection with our recommendations. And then the final permit would be what would be presented to a contractor to complete the work. But the avenue of how to connect one trail to the other is at this point substantially laid out. It's a matter of collecting some additional data so we can work with PennDOT to make that crossing as safe as possible.
So would that be the north side of Taylorsville, the south side of Taylorsville then?
It appears the preferred way to cross would be where the trail currently comes down, which I believe is the north side.
Mhm.
It would cross on that side and then cross to the side where the Toll Bridge Commission's building is, which currently has their trail kind of waiting for the connection.
Okay. And then we haven't applied for grants for that yet, have we?
We have not, no.
Right.
Right. There was the
The
Green Light
Growing Greener
Go.
last year was attempted or the Green Light
Green
Go,
Light Go
rather.
was attempted and was not awarded. So I don't, there has not been any additional funding application for that intersection at this point.
Correct. And a lot of these trail connections and those types of grants that come out annually, we usually see them, being able to be applied for this upcoming year in the spring. So we would definitely look to put an application together for the construction of the trail and work to try to get some additional funding for when it's ready to be built.
So of the proposal, how much could be done before we go for a grant?
It would be the township's preference. I would say we've broken the proposal into phases specifically for that purpose. The data collection and traffic analysis would be the first work done. We'd look to get that started this month, kind of between the holidays to get some accurate traffic data. Engineering design, really to bring it up to the end of the permitting with PennDOT. We would anticipate the grants that are out there for these kinds of connections to focus on the construction of the work, which is described in the proposal as phases 3 and 4, which is the bidding and then the construction management inspection of the work to be done.
I mean, I think to answer your question, I think if we focus on phases 1 and 2, that would probably prepare us to be competitive from a funding application standpoint. It would get us through the permitting process and also the design process so that we had, in essence, a shovel-ready project, which would be fundable and implementable based on the permitting feedback that we had received. Again, we would have to come back to you for authorization to bid on the project. So there would be an additional, touch point from the Board of Supervisors perspective prior to obviously proceeding with actual construction. And I think there would be an opportunity for us to again seek external funding for implementation purposes, and we would be better positioned if we had this design work done. So that there was certainty versus a conceptual plan that may or may not be acceptable to PennDOT.
And for the grant funding that is with these trail connections, they're often very competitive. There's a lot of towns that are looking for these types of pedestrian and multi-use connections. So to Dave's point, have that shovel-ready project really kind of helps your applications when that's turned in to go after those funding sources.
And if the funding from a grant, that would be next year, then you're saying the process would be springtime for a grant application then?
Typically they have those deadlines come around spring. It depends on the grants. So for what we've seen the last few years, a lot of those trail connection type grants are coming out or at least applied for in the spring. You may not hear from them for 2 to 3 months sometimes. It's kind of discretion of the agency giving out the funding. But to get it shovel ready, designed and ready for those applications to go in would be really our priority with the work. And then really seeing the best path to get the funding and also the timing to make the project happen.
Would the maker of the motion be consider a friendly amendment? So what if we just say that we approve phases 1 and 2 of the proposal?
We come back.
Hmm?
Yeah, can you hold
Sure.
that in your pocket for a minute?
Sure.
I think, any other questions you have? I don't want to stop you.
Can I ask one before you go?
For now, that's what I have for now. Yeah.
So, related and unrelated, I know that Derek has been talking to them about whatever is going on in the base of Woodside Road. And I appreciate that it may be limited to one side, but then again, it may not be. There's definitely the waviness. And I'm wondering if we know more, and maybe we should just hold on anything. And FYI, I will continue to abstain about the bike path, but moving on. Because I'm just not sure this, the
Do
road.
you have any additional insight in terms of the condition of the sub base? Again, the work that I know Derek was corresponding with Delaware Valley. I'm sorry, Bridge Commission. I always mix that up. But have you been involved in any of those discussions at this point, or?
I don't have any additional information from the last time he updated on it. I would say in regards to this connection, really the governing timetable of it is that permitting with PennDOT, which would be kind of a separate thing compared to the pavement restoration and repair. The Taylorsville Road is the PennDOT portion. The repair with the joint toll bridge of the intersection as it comes from the different sides, being Woodside and going through, could be kind of part of the whole intersection at the end of the day. But the permitting, once they issue that is kind of in place for, at least a year or so. You could have the project happen right away if it's ready, or if it needs to kind of just wait, if there's a couple other items nearby being ironed out, that permitting would still be good. So it's still a shovel ready one you could go after funding for. Obviously, if there's some other issues being resolved approaching that intersection, we would look to coordinate that and make sure it's all taking place in the right sequence.
Madam Chair, do you have is there a concern with the road base of Woodside and or Taylorsville Road, of which I believe the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission did redo both recently? So then that would be a concern and would be their responsibility, but there is a concern with the roadbed?
As I understand it.
Yeah, there's like sloughing that's occurring at the intersection because of the incline, the slope in which you're approaching the intersection of Taylorsville. So Derek's been again talking to the Toll Bridge Commission about that issue, recognizing they were the ones that made the improvement.
Yeah.
That's really that leg of Woodside coming down, as they mentioned, that slope coming down. This is the main hill coming to the intersection. Whereas the trail, which is off-road, and then the crossing of the intersection itself is more of a pedestrian connection layout permit exercise with PennDOT, more so than roadway reconstruction.
Right. And I know, I mean, I haven't talked to anybody in the Delaware Joint Toll Bridge Commission in a long time about this. I guess I'd be curious to see where they're at on if there's a road quality issue. They would ultimately be responsible for that, I think. And probably need to, want to work on what our strategy would be to address that as well, because that is a very heavily traveled area. Full disclosure, I drive it almost every day. Unfortunately, I'm driving at a high rate of speed. Sorry, Chief. I don't know what the road says.
So Derek did send me a message. He said they're awaiting results from core testing. So they did do core testing.
Then it's appropriate to table this until we know more about that.
Maybe, but I would say we could certainly maybe get. I don't know. I could be of either way. It depends on your perspective. And as long as we came back at this, we knew the core sampling by next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, again, that they're doing that, so I'm not sure what the timing of that is. I guess what's the concern in terms of the interface of that versus the alignment of a trail crossing? I mean, again, PennDOT's going to dictate those parameters as Isaac's stated. Doing this work will absolutely position us to be more competitive from a funding standpoint versus a conceptual drawing that hasn't been evaluated from a constructability standpoint, from a design standpoint, from a permitting standpoint. This is a project that, again, is incorporated as a capital project in the proposed 2024 budget to be internally funded entirely. So to the extent that we receive external fundings, we would be offsetting those costs.
And the area that is being investigated with the core sampling for what looks to be subsurface repair, when usually you have like the wavy pavement, that would not overlap with what this project is looking to focus on with the trail connection at all. It's the roadway separate from the trail that's coming and connecting across the intersection. If the I guess the concern is that this would kind of contradict or crisscross with what would be done with any kind of roadway repair. This is in a different area that would be looking at the intersection for a trail connection.
Any of the designs would all have to be PennDOT approved anyway, right? They're going to go through and review this as you're doing the designs, right?
That's correct. Yeah, the permitting.
They'll go through the
PennDOT.
whole, okay.
Yeah.
So they'll be double checking and picking over this.
Taylorsville is.
Taylorsville is,
Because it's Taylorsville plus then, right? So
Right. It's really the crossing of that signalized intersection. So it's a HOP, a highway occupancy permit with PennDOT, and then also you do a signal permit for their timing and things like that.
getting back to the waviness, I guess I'm saying waviness, I guess. That's all on Woodside, not on Taylorsville. So would that have anything to do with PennDOT at all?
I guess the conclusion of where they would have the limits may come into play with talking with them a bit, but I know Derek would know mostly of who he's talking to. That portion would be more of the Joint Toll Bridge Commission coordination.
And then on the waviness again, in terms of ownership of the road long term, right? It's a township road.
Mhm.
Does the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission maintain responsibility for that road in perpetuity, or do they hand it back to us? We're responsible for it at some point.
I believe it was always going to transition to be township responsibility. I think they were funding the improvements, and that was the extent of their obligation. And so it's more of a warranty work issue than a perpetual maintenance issue.
I think some portion of the Woodside Taylorsville, and I'm not sure, but the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission has like a service area that they're responsible for. Right. I don't know if part of Woodside is in that service area, which means it would continue to be theirs, but everything up from that might be ours. So I don't know if there's a dividing line on Woodside where that would be, or if there is a dividing line.
Yeah, we can look into that. I just know that, based on looking at things like the extent of signal equipment that was installed and ultimately the responsibility of which was transferred to the township as the permittee for signals,
Oh, okay.
I can't imagine that there was a robust. What I'm saying is if there was some sort of agreement prior to the construction that obligated that, I'm not aware of it, because there's a lot of infrastructure that was installed that was ultimately transferred to the township as its maintenance responsibility. So.
Okay.
It sounds like there's a lot of if, ands, buts, and a lot of.
Yeah, but I don't know that any of this affects the location of the crossing. Obviously there's a terminus of an existing trail. PennDOT has jurisdiction over the permitting of that. There's going to be signal modifications. Again, I think our recommendation is to proceed at least with phase 1 and phase 2 of this, so that you're positioned to be able to take advantage of an application versus, as I keep on saying, submitting a conceptual design that may have permitting issues that then creates other issues on the back end.
Can we RFP that then?
RFP that.
Yeah, the design piece of it.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. Yeah.
I'd lean towards that.
I would add too, with our meeting with the Toll Bridge Commission in August, they made clear that what they're waiting for at this point is for the township to have that HOP permit to bring the trail to connect with them. That was kind of their part they were waiting on along this whole path of having the township come down with the trail. So this, is proposed to do just that. As Dave mentioned, it's a project that's slated going into the 2024 budget and starting to position that for permitting and also to have a shovel-ready project for grant funding is the focus of the proposal here tonight.
I think it's important, to everyone's point, I think it's important to have a shovel-ready project when we go for a grant. That it sells the project to whoever the grantors are. Agree with that. And so the data collection phase or task, as I wouldn't necessarily call it a phase, but the task coupled with the design task after that are important to get moving fairly soon. I think, and just to be consistent with what I've been saying the last 6 years, I think when it comes to larger important design projects, I think the role of the township engineer generally is to be the QA/QC review and to make sure that whoever's doing the design does it right, rather than always being the designer who also does the inspection, because that kind of sort of PM 101, right? Just
Sure. No, understood. So I didn't know if you wanted to talk maybe about sort of the team that you're, just to create some distinction between sort of the capacity that you're bringing to the project versus perhaps prior projects where it was more of a civil engineering approach versus a transportation engineering approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Might be helpful just to distinguish again, given some of the past circumstances from a project design and sort of implementation standpoint.
Yeah, I can speak to the proposal we have before you tonight and the work that we've been doing to prepare that, which began with the meeting that came out of the Joint Toll Bridge Commission meeting with them in August, and then meeting with township staff to talk about the scope, what we're looking to have done at that intersection. Remington and Vernick obviously has a full engineering service capabilities, and this is being led by our transportation and infrastructure group, really led by the two leads in that group, Mr. Steve Bolt and Rich Reeser. And they are the ones that have identified the different tasks that are needed. They have many years of experience, not only with PennDOT, but other public agencies for permitting. They constantly do work with PennDOT and the folks there that are both traffic signal related and HOP permitting personnel. So the work here is described in detail of the different tasks that would be needed. They know exactly what would be needed for this type of project, and the collection of the data through design to have it fully ready for that permitting process, we believe is fully prepared and better than any parallel that could do the same. So we are confident in the group that we have, and we believe that the team that we have is our top team in our transportation group to do that work.
Good question for do we foresee any on the ground ground and down sort of work? So in terms of opening pits or anything like that for running conduit, do we see any grading that needs to be done for this project, or is it strictly
as far as the work in the intersection that would eventually be done?
Yeah.
We would, the timing and the signal coordination, that would be something with PennDOT to coordinate. So if they needed an additional, say push button or things that allow pedestrians to get into the phasing of the signals, whether that's, connections and things that they have already in the intersection, or if they wanted to add something that would be part of what would be identified through that permitting process.
So you'll pick up where I'm going with this in a second, I think. Is there any portion of this work that would require something to be completed off the existing pavement, or else such that we might have to involve the Soil Conservation District or somebody else for some other type of disturbance, so we have to get permitted?
We would expect some kind of surrounding work as part of it. So the trail itself would be coming down and actually to the corner there. On the other side, where that long piece of guide rail kind of sweeps around that one corner, There is a pipe that discharges out on that side. So that would be just a coordination of how the trail coming around that corner would affect the guide rail, and there most likely would be some soil conservation, coordination when there's that disturbance.
That stuff's not included in here, though. It's just PennDOT permitting from what I read.
Correct. Well, the HOP, it's all within there right away. So it would kind of go through that process of the signal permitting, the HOP, and if there's a minor ENS permit with the conservation district, that would be part of the design process.
Okay. I'm just wanting to make sure, because when we look at what's the task description or the phase description, it doesn't mention that side of things. So we don't want to, it makes no mention of the ENS stuff. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it would be really determined by PennDOT's preference on what they want to do at that corner.
And then where you have the cost of services at the back end, slightly different wording than what I'm used to. So I just want to verify that the not to exceed amount all in for all phases that you're proposing here from start to finish is 50,000 even. Not to exceed, I'm assuming that's time and materials not to exceed. That's not a firm fixed price not to exceed.
That is our fixed price for the project. So
Okay,
not to
fixed.
exceed, we don't anticipate going over. If for some reason there's additional reviews or anything that PennDOT requires, we'd come to the township first to have anything requested, that might be not within what we already have described. But that's our not to exceed number for the project. We would do that for all our projects as we typically do for capital work. That way it can be budgeted and known what that amount may be. As always, we aim to be, under that as much as we can with how much we have to coordinate with some of these permitting agencies.
Another way to ask that is, the end of the day, let's say all this gets approved. At the end of the day, no major changes, right? Modifications to the issues. The scope is the scope. You're going to give us a bill for 50,000 no matter what, or if you manage to keep it under, let's say you get it to 42, are we going to get a bill for 42 instead?
If it's under, it would be under.
Okay,
It's a not to exceed.
So it's a
Correct.
time and materials not to exceed, not a firm fixed price. Firm fixed price is you give us a bill for 50K no matter what.
Yes.
Even if-
Okay. I understand what you're
that's what
saying.
I'm-
Yeah. It's not a
yeah.
lump sum. It's a
I'm s-
hourly time and material not to exceed the 50 at the most is worst case scenario 50.
Colin, did you want to ask anything, Colin?
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if there's a question for Isaac, just more as a comment. I'm not sure, given the budget process that we just went through, that I'm comfortable moving forward on a $34,000 spend at this time for a new project. Was this project, do we know for sure that this was contemplated as a line item in Derek's budget request?
Yes, this is specifically in one of the listed capital projects in the draft 2024 budget, including the engineering work that is currently being contemplated. So this is not a new project from a budgetary standpoint based on the proposed budget document.
Okay, so in essence, we've already authorized this project from that budgetary perspective.
Well, you haven't adopted the budget actually officially, but
Sure.
it's at least contemplated from a budgetary standpoint. Yes.
Yeah. I just don't know that it's essential at this time, and I'm not particularly comfortable obligating the funding $34,000 just to find out if we get a grant from the state is a decent amount of money at this time. Did any of the other supervisors have a thought on that?
Well, the budgeting is for the whole project without a grant. So the reason why we would do this is to get a grant so that we can save money on the total project. So it's a chicken egg kind of thing, which is, I think if you did phase 1 and phase 2, you position yourself for a grant, which helps position yourself better for reducing the total spend next year on the project and completing it and finalizing it. So I think that's where you would argue, hey, I would definitely do phase 1 and 2. The question, the concerns that Supervisor Grenier has about QA, QC, some of that gets resolved by PennDOT, but also we could have separate QA if we wanted to, with a traffic engineer, for example, as an option for a modest project on that. So my sense is that it'd be best to kind of keep moving forward so that we can see if we can get a grant that would take us out and not have to spend what we were planning from the capital budget on that. And that would free us up for other capital needs that we have down the road, even in next year. So if we were to get the grant, that could free us up for other choices, which I know, there are folks who have different suggestions and stuff. So I appreciate that.
And to your point, there's no obligation to build the project this year if we don't get a grant.
Yes, that's an option too, right? Yeah.
We would still be voting to obligate a minimum of $34,000, or is it the whole 50? No, the rest of it is construction management. Is that right, Isaac? Or
Mhm.
project management?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
The second half, if you will, is the bidding and construction management of the project once it's ready to go to construction. So getting it ready to that point would be those first two phases as they're listed in the proposal. And to John's point, working with staff, that's been kind of our approach as well, is to look at how to make the projects that are, aimed and slated for 2024 to happen. And this would obviously be the way to go about that. And obviously, if we get funding assistance and you open up some additional monies that would have been spent on this budget item to do other things, that you might want to reallocate it towards.
And to dig in on what might seem like a very stupid detail, because it's only $4,400, but $4,400 for bidding. If I translate that to person hours of labor at a reasonably skilled labor rate, that's 110 hours of time. I imagine that you have costs for advertising that are informing that $4,400. I just want to make sure that we're being good stewards of the taxpayer dollar.
Absolutely. Yeah. That bidding phase, it really takes it from the construction plans, which would already have the permits from PennDOT to go along with it, through the public bid process, the review of the bids, the bid tab, and the recommendations to the board, all the way up until the contracts would be in place. And then from there, it would go into that construction management phase as it's described. And as always, as we mentioned in the proposal, if there's a desire to see kind of the personnel and breakdown that we have for our transportation team and the folks we have to put all this together, we can provide that.
Yeah, I think I'll close my comment at this point, Madam Chair, just by saying I don't know that I'm comfortable obligating the funds. Again, given the tough budgeting process that we went through, I know we've discussed the budget from a high level. I just don't know about this particular project.
So I know there was talk about a friendly amendment. Dan being the maker of the motion and you having a friendly amendment, John, to scale back.
Yeah, my suggestion was to do phase 1 and phase 2 so that we would be positioned to get a grant and get that option. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to get a grant and we would still be, we still have budgeted the full amount for next year. So my thought is that we would go with that route and see where we're at grant wise. And that at least buys us that opportunity. Eventually we have to definitely finish the project because, we've committed to it and we've got the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission. We signed an agreement with them that we would do this. So the longer it takes us to do it, the more expensive it becomes over time. That was part of a consideration of the sale for, I don't know if you remember the park and ride. So there were about 10 acres there that were sold to the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission. As part of that agreement, we agreed to build the bike path down to Taylorsville. And they agreed to pay us some money, and a portion of that was allocated for the bike path. So we eventually have to complete that agreement. And so it's just a question of time when you want to do that.
It's really a safety issue.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, you can't leave that in the current condition that it's in.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to block that entire portion that you just installed up at the intersection of, I guess, what is that, Clearview? Is that Clearview there? Going down to Woodside Road.
Yeah.
So.
Kidding.
So we're under we have a legal obligation to the Joint Toll Bridge Commission to complete this work. Is that an accurate statement?
We have an agreement with them that has that as, yes.
I haven't looked at it in a while, but yeah, and plus the separate issue is the concern about potential liability if we don't do it. I think that's the other thing that generally.
Just to be clear, it's still closed at this point, even though people keep messing with all the barricades that we put up, it is still closed.
It is, yeah. And the first piece that this looks at is the connections point of view is to complete and make that connection at the bottom of where Woodside Road comes down to the corner, a safe way for folks to approach the light and then also to get across all the way safely. So currently, as you mentioned, it stops short of that. It stops at the right of way of PennDOT at this time.
I think my thought process right now is I agree with Supervisor Lewis that we should move forward with task 1 and 2, so we can get something that's shovel ready. That being said, my strong preference for design projects is to, I think this is what Supervisor McCartney may have said, if I misspeak, please correct me, preference would be to RFP it for those phases, make sure that RVE has an opportunity to review it as our township engineer provide clear QA, QC in inspection services as they do, but making sure that we have those, I was going to say guide rails, but probably a bad pun, so that we have oversight across the board, because I think that's historically we've had some issues with that on projects, and I just sitting in my seat and when my daily seat, it's tough to not have that in place, because it's just a good best management practice as we implement them.
I would just clarify for the data collection and the design that would go into PennDOT for permitting. I would say it would be redundant for 2 firms to do that part, to submit to PennDOT for the permitting on behalf of the township. So
yeah.
It would be more common in the industry to have the firm that would collect the data, analyze the traffic, design the crossing, submit the permit to PennDOT, have them, they are the QA/QC and permitting body that would review it, and then, go on from there with the obtained permit. So and correct me if I'm misunderstanding, but to have a firm design it, have another one QA/QC it, and then have, I guess, that combination submitted to PennDOT is not quite the common
I
way
wouldn't
to
have another
submit.
firm submit permits. I don't consider any regulatory agency to ever be a QA/QC role in anything, including the township staff. That's just not their role. Their role is to review it against regulations, and that's it. It's not to provide any cost engineering or value add that way, to look for best practices. It's simply to review something to see if it meets the regulations and can be built. That's their bar. It's not their place, even though whether they want to or not, it's not their place to get outside the regulations and tell us to do other things. That's what QA/QC engineer can do. They can provide that value engineering, which is service that is a valuable service. That's what they call value engineering, that I think is helpful on most things. So I think a design engineer separate from a review engine, someone working on behalf of the township to review things for our best interest is in our best interest generally. So we have a motion.
A friendly offer.
I would say, I'm thinking, Mr. Solicitor, you've been listening to us speak. Almost want to amend the whole thing to.
You'd have to withdraw your original.
Could I just withdraw the original?
Just for everybody's benefit, I know there's a new case law about agendas and notice. The fact that this is on the agenda is sufficient notice, so you can change it. It's not like we're adding something completely new. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. So we go ahead. Do you want to withdraw your first motion?
I will withdraw my first motion formally.
Okay.
Okay, there's no second for withdrawal or anything like that.
I don't think I can withdraw with you.
Second, and then I'll make a practice attempt, and please correct my wording. I would say a motion to RFP, data collection and design services associated with the Signal Crossing project.
I'm sorry, for data collection and
Design.
design. Okay.
I'll second that motion.
And who, just so we know, who will be preparing the RFP?
I would direct township staff.
Okay.
I
Sorry.
knew you were going to go that way. Is there anything else that you think I need to add?
Specifically,
It's specifically for the Taylorsville Road.
For the project mentioned in this 11B.
we have a new motion by Dan with a second by Colin. Any more discussion for the board? Any public comment? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed?
01.
401. Thank you. I abstained.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, and then please, Isaac, we have a drainage project update,
Okay, very good.
AKA Maple Vale,
We
sometimes
have our
known as
proposal,
Highland.
So we look forward to the results on that one. Our final item for tonight is for just the drainage projects in the Maple Vale neighborhood area and also Taylorsville Road, as we were just talking about. The Mapleville Drive DEP permitting update. The emergency permit is still active and in good standing. The general permit, which has been in progress with coordination with DEP's directions and comments. The submission deadline for that is January 20th, 2024. We highly anticipate it would be in before that with no issue. This doesn't affect any construction that's been done in the field. This is more of a paperwork submission, but that's the update for the permitting end of Mapleville Drive.
Can I ask you, so because there's a deadline, that mean typically, or at least in my experience, that means there's been some back and forth and they've given a deficiency letter saying, respond to these comments by the state so we can keep moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that coordination was, as we've talked about in previous meetings, amount of pipes and things included in this permit.
It's common practice. I just want, when they set a deadline, it means you are going back and forth. So that's a good.
Right, and that's why they extended
Yeah.
that. So, and it primarily with the emergency permit has that shelf life that will expire. And that's why the general permit is submitted to have that more of a permanent standing there. The second item we wanted to update on was the stream clearing at Taylorsville Road on both sides, the east and west sides. The next steps for really focusing on the efficiency of those streams is being coordinated with the work being done by land studies. We're coordinating with township staff for our wetland specialists to analyze the site for possible gravel bar removal in the work areas. That was one of the things talked about with the DEP in the pre-application meeting. So that's the latest work on the stream areas on either side of Taylorsville.
Quick question on that one. There was some recent, we talked about this a little bit. There was some recent clearing. I think it was directed by, was it our public works department did it, or do we have it?
Yes.
It was, and it directed by sort of the land studies folks, I think, right?
Yeah, it was kind of a collaborative effort. Them, us, DPW, the county conservation district's been involved with some guidance. And that's, the work that you kind of see if you look out to the side of the road there.
Yeah, I've gotten a few questions about it. Do we have a DEP permit in place for work over there yet? Or is that the one that's
No, not yet.
So is that along a stream corridor?
Say again?
Is the stream weave past that right there? Or is this the stream corridor somewhere else?
Stream
that-
corridor.
yeah.
Stream Corridor.
Or that
Well-
the area that was cleared is on each bank of the stream going through there.
So let me put it another way. Is it within the 50-foot regulated floodway of the stream corridor where we cleared lots of trees and vegetation?
It's beyond the 50 foot of the roadway. It's within the 500 linear feet limit where it triggers other permitting.
I'll back it. Streams this way.
Mhm.
Top of bank of the stream here. Clearing next to it here, that there's a 50-foot regulated floodway, right?
Right.
Where
So the work we've,
permit requirements.
the discussions with them, it's not work that's inside the banks of the stream, but is within the area from the top of bank where you see the clearing that's occurred. Yep.
We should double check to make sure we're in compliance with chapter 105 because they do regulate the 50-foot assumed floodway along every stream in the Commonwealth unless FEMA has set up a different floodway.
Okay.
That's a concern. Make sure we're in compliance.
And yeah, it's the Conservation District, DEP, and also the Army Corps of the folks we've been talking to throughout the process.
Yeah, no, I know we've been talking to them. I just want to make sure we didn't do anything prematurely that they'll be upset about.
The other item we wanted to update would be the Highland Drive Drainage Improvements Project. As some of the previous meetings have discussed, we're looking to have this move forward as quickly as possible to add drainage infrastructure to the water coming down Highland Drive towards Taylorsville Road. The plans are being finalized. This was following the public meeting that we had with residents, coordinating with staff. The pre-application meeting with DEP, which is before their permitting process. We did get that scheduled. It's for tomorrow morning. So we're looking forward to meeting with them, which will really define what their timeline is for that permitting of the stream that goes through the culvert there. That will govern whether it can really get bid out publicly and have the plans completed for what they're looking for, or if they're going to have some adjustments to what we want to have on the plan before we would put out the public bid. Either way, we're looking to have it substantially finished on the design side, as well as any kind of feedback we get tomorrow morning to have before the board at the December 20th meeting to request authorization to move into that bidding phase as soon as it's ready. So whether we don't expect that to be the day after the December 20th meeting, but we would aim to have that before the January meetings would start. So that would give us that window to get the project into public bid. And then obviously we'd have it for your consideration once the bids would come in.
Anticipating a GP11 for that one? Or is there an existing GP11 for that crossing? So a GP11 is a operations and maintenance permit that goes along with every culvert or bridge plus 50 feet upstream or downstream. So most bridges or major culverts, once they're installed, they have what they call an O&M permit or GP11 that's basically in perpetuity. So you can clean the stream up 50 feet upstream and downstream. That's how the DEP operates. Then there's some specific conditions that go along with it long term. But we're usually well within those conditions on most things. So GPs are good because they're usually faster than the alternative in terms of how long they take the process. But I'll say I'm getting a little bit concerned on timing because it seems like it's gotten pushed out a little bit. Probably DEP is not easy to schedule with.
Correct.
I understand that one. But we just got to keep our foot on the accelerator here so we can get it constructed, because that's an obvious, as you know, that's a major concern for folks in that area.
Absolutely. Yeah. The tomorrow morning's meeting was the soonest we could get with them. And that exact question would be clarified tomorrow morning, and we'll know exactly what the steps are for the permitting with DEP. Those are the updates I have this evening.
Any other questions of supervisors or Isaac? Nope. Any public comment?
Hi, April Ballwaits-Clower, resident of Makefield Township. Got it this time, right? Isaac, thanks for the updates. We appreciate that. Just had some questions about the land studies results. We were kind of expecting them this week with the budget meetings coming up so soon on the heels of today.
Sure. So there was, I was going to address this, and I have two items sort of related to drainage project updates that I could sort of piggyback on, one addressing the land studies issue. So there was some infiltration testing that was done on November the 30th to sort of truth test some of the recommendations that they're contemplating to make to us. Land studies will be at the Board of Supervisors meeting on the 20th of December for purposes of providing its final report and recommendations to the Board of Supervisors, so and to the township. So with the infiltration testing and waiting for the results and some of the soil sampling that had to be done, that's the reason for the 2-week push in terms of their final presentation.
Is there any implication to the budget with the timing of that, of the results not coming back until the 20th?
So again, as has been talked about as it relates to the capital projects that are contemplated in the 2020 budget, to the extent that there's something that is identified as an additional capital project, the Board of Supervisors would have flexibility to reallocate funds to that priority. So that was sort of the nature of the conversation that occurred within the discussion over the proposed budget. So.
Just quickly kind of related to the budget area. So we were able to get in touch with a lovely resource through the United Way, through their impact director, a gentleman who is an architect, and he works with an organization called the Elevated Studio. And what they do is they go to flood impacted areas and they help residents. They work with municipalities. He mentioned a few grants that were available. So I was wondering which grants you've applied for any work that's being done or proposed as part of the stormwater management plan that we've had so far. If they,
Yeah, so
I know that you talked about some even for this year when the work needs to be done.
Yeah, so we're actually in the process of talking with PEMA about submitting what's called a BRIC grant, which will relate to implementation of some of the land studies work. So we've been working with the respective PEMA staff to complete that application. The application is due on the 22nd of December. So we are working through that at this point. And Land Studies is also advising us on the project narrative to try to advance some of the implementation efforts that are contemplated with their proposed improvements.
In addition, we also met with the Southeast Director of the Pennsylvania's Department of Community and Economic Development. They provide a lot of different types of grants, including grants for this type of work.
Mhm.
So we're township manager coordinating with them to see what size and number and types and all that stuff grants we can go after, as well as
Yeah, we also had meetings with Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, which is also providing us with access to essentially a funding navigator to provide advice for implementation of some of the planned stormwater work that we have. So we have been talking to a number of funding agencies and planning agencies to try to identify resources to implement these improvements.
Some recommendations he gave us, I'm sure they're on your list, but in case they're not, a CDBG-DR grant was a community development block grant for disaster relief. And the other one was a hazard mitigation grant program, and that's through FEMA.
Right.
A lot of the information he gave us as residents would be helpful if we were in a floodplain, and a lot of things that Mr. Majewski has kind of talked about and what we could do as a neighborhood, but we'd like to have those discussions continue because we feel like that kind of pause, which is not really okay, but we need to understand what our options are as residents at this point.
The other thing that you may or may not have seen, some of us were there actually this week. The governor just signed a bill related. It had a couple different items. The main one was reviewing setting up a task force to review flood insurance options for residents across the state. That was sort of the headline, but the back end of it, the other side of things was also looking at providing guidance to municipalities, counties, and residents throughout the Commonwealth, how to different things that may come up that they may study for recommendations and how to address things. That's a long-term thing, but it's something that this Senator Sierra and Representative Warren were the sponsors of the bill on either side of the legislature that the governor signed this week. So that's something to keep an eye out for, as well as we also do these sort of very local projects that sort of larger scale, bigger picture items.
Thank you. Just lastly, related to the land studies findings. So when Brian, we went around the neighborhood today, he got to see the culverts that have been cleaned. He had some very simple, what he considered very straightforward recommendations. And I realize land studies professionals, they do this for a living. You all do this too, Dan, I know that. But if there's a way for us to share his feedback with you as well, because he walked through, we've talked a bit about what other options we have with the canal. We know that DCNR doesn't want any more water coming to the canal. We all know that water is going to the canal anyway. However, there is that parcel of land right along the bike path there. Well, not the bike, the walking path there, that pit that's there. That would be an option potentially to drain water there, have it sit and have a slower way for it, a more controlled way to drain to the canal.
Yeah, and the infiltration testing related to basins on both north and south of the neighborhood. So the land studies is identifying opportunities to reduce flow and velocity of flow into the canal and promote infiltration on those parcels.
Okay, so they came in to to that area specifically?
Both the area north and south, contemplating the potential of construction of two infiltration basins on both of those parcels.
I'm
Yep.
smiling. You haven't seen that in a while, right? I'm happy to hear that.
But to your point, if there's anything else you're thinking of or you heard, just send it to us.
Yeah, absolutely. He was, I mean, obviously he's very knowledgeable with what he does, but he had some pretty good feedback. He was happy to see what had been cleared out because I explained to him kind of how it had been in the past. He did mention that if at all possible, obviously if that were wider and on a slant to kind of bring the water down, but I'm sure that might be part of land studies work as well. Okay.
And when we did that infiltration testing, at least initially, the results look pretty favorable for that water to have like that soak-in effect. So,
Rates were good.
so
Mhm.
it looks pretty favorable.
Last thing was more specific to our exact properties, and I'll be quick with this. There was concern we had pooling in the yard, and Derek's crew came out and they put a swale, but it points to my patio now, and I'm getting more water than I was getting before. So he also had some recommendations about ways that we could swale differently between the homes, maybe put in some natural, some native plants and some vegetation that might make it a little less awkward than it is right now.
Yeah, something that's similar, if I'm hearing you correctly, I'm understanding what there's Philadelphia Water Department used to have a program called the Backyard Buffer Program that provided a lot of guidance on how to do just that. I used to work on that.
He does a ton of work in the area. He was out on his way to Strawberry Mansion today.
Okay. So I would, if you're curious, I would Google Backyard Buffer Program, Philly Water Department, just to get it doesn't look like a stormwater basin or anything like that. It's landscaping to deal with water management.
Yep.
So it can look nice.
Okay, awesome. I think that was all I had. Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Oh, I think we're gonna have a rush for the mic. Ladies. Okay, thank you.
18 Mapleville Drive. I just have a quick question regarding the budget. Does the budget for next year take into consideration the maintenance? You've already cleared a lot. We've seen that. Does it take into consideration that you're going to have to keep maintaining what you've already cleared? Can't be just clearing and then walking away from it. So questions about the budget.
Yeah, I mean, we have internal staff resource that'll continue to be dedicated to that. So we'll now that there's been a lot of I'll say heavy lifting that's been done in terms of deferred maintenance, that's a focus for Derek and the internal public works crews.
Do you because it looked like there were people Thanksgiving. Is there additional work that will be done around us from now till, I guess I know the ground is starting to freeze. It's getting harder, but we all know what you do now is going to, have a big effect on the spring. So
Yeah.
does the work continue?
I think there's some finishing work, perhaps on the parcel north of your neighborhood, but not immediately in the neighborhood at this point. So
What you've done is going to be it for now?
for this year, I would imagine, yes. There's just some, I think, additional stabilization, maybe some silt socket that's going to be installed, those kinds of things. But beyond that, that I think is the extent of it.
And then not for just as a reminder, we're moving forward with the Highland Drive work that's related to that. And then land studies, when they come here in a few weeks, we'll get to hear what their recommendations are, which is some of it I'm assuming is right, as you just heard, actually is right near in the neighborhood essentially. So we'll see what they're proposed. I haven't seen it yet myself, so I'm guessing, but I can assume a few things. So that would also get on the calendar, so to speak, as recommendations.
So pretty much it sounded like you have started making improvements based on land studies recommendations. Is that not right? Did I not hear that correctly?
I think what was mentioned is they had a small sort of improvement that they recommended some clearing, right, to provide some additional sort of, I guess, safety from an overflow standpoint, right? That was the extent of it that they've done. So
And that's the clearing you see just before the on-ramp to the bridge coming from the northern entrance, and maybe you probably saw on the right side of the road.
Yep.
There.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So pretty much anything that they are recommending will start next year.
that's our intent. Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Lori Gray. I am a Lower Makefield Township resident. Kind of to go along with that, and I just ask for your indulgence because I'm trying to follow all of this. So there's been money allocated in the 2024 budget, and the in the capital budget for all these improvements that we're talking about. But we don't know the cost of all of those improvements yet because studies haven't been completed yet. So the cost could actually be greater than what we've already got allocated and budgeted. Am I understanding that correctly? Did I
So
hear that
there's a
right?
couple different things. And again, I know we just went over a lot. So like the Highland project, we have a cost opinion, an opinion of probable cost from RVE at this point that is more of a concrete sort of price perspective, a more concrete price. The land study stuff is the stuff that there have not been defined costs at this point. And so we were talking within the context of those, we were talking about the potential reallocating some of the capital funds that were allocated to other projects to potentially implement those.
Okay, and that's what I thought I heard. So, but didn't we just approve monies from a capital project to be spent? And I guess my question is, which ones do you approve and which ones do you not approve in the event that you have to allocate additional funds for this project, which we all know is very, very important. I get that's where I'm just getting a little, I don't want to circle us back to how we got where we are today with just kind of shifting, robbing Peter to pay Paul, my words, but just shifting money, around. So I just question who controls that and how do we know?
Yeah, I mean, the action that was just taken in terms of allocation to a capital project was there was no allocation. It was just simply us as a staff to release a document to solicit proposals for design and data collection related to a potential capital project. So the board didn't allocate.
Okay, so the $34,000 that was talking, that's not going to get spent in this phase 1, phase 2.
To the extent that they accept a proposal from someone, they will. But at this point, the direction was just simply to go out, solicit proposals, and then we would bring those proposals back, and the board would then at that point determine whether they want to proceed with that project or not.
Okay, and I appreciate the time with this. I really, as you all do, and I really appreciate it very, very much. Being wise to where our money is going and where it's being spent and how it's being spent. So, okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hello, Greg Lusecki, 18 Makefield Drive. I just have a question. So when the land studies people come in and they do their report out on the 20th, are they going to include a schedule for each recommendation that they have? At least a draft.
There would be a prioritization. I don't know that it would have a specific, time schedule, but they will prioritize improvements.
I think we should have at least a draft to help you make decisions on what you think your priority is.
Well, again, they'll define priority, and then at that point, then we would have to, determine how we're proceeding from a scheduling standpoint. Land studies as an external party is not going to tell us that in January you should do X and so forth. So
okay, I'm just concerned. I don't want it to go further out in time. Is the bottom line concern?
Understood.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room? Any other public comment online? Hearing none, we are done with the engineer's report. Moving on to agenda item number 12, manager's report.
Yeah, the only other item I had just related to sort of drainage and stormwater, just for the benefit of the public and also just for the board's reaffirmation, is we did issue a request for proposals to update the township stormwater management ordinance. Those responses are due on December the 18th. And we've directly sent it to 10 firms at this point, in addition to it being publicly available. So depending on those responses, that may be something that will be before you for your consideration at your meeting on the 20th of December. Do you want me to just roll into? Okay.
Quick question on that. So the due date is the 18th?
18th, yes.
So are you going to have time between the 18th and 20th to review and make a recommendation?
Potentially, yes. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be our attempt to try to do that. Yes. So item 12A just before you for your consideration for approval is the township's 2024 holiday schedule. I don't know that you in the past have taken public action on this issue, but just wanted to for the purposes of clarity in terms of when the office is closed, the administration office is closed, thought it was appropriate for the Board of Supervisors to not only be aware of this, but also take action to approve the proposed holiday schedule. The schedule is consistent with past practice. The one sort of addition relates to New Year's Eve, the half day. Again, in practice, the township has closed its offices, but in the interest of having clarity for purposes of customers and so forth, that this would be publicly available on the township website and also communicated more broadly than it has been in the past.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the Lower Makefield Township 2024 holiday schedule.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by John, seconded by James. Any discussion from the board?
Quick
Go ahead,
question for
Dan.
the Solicitor, and maybe Chief too. How does this, some of our labor agreements probably have
They
holidays built in?
specify, yeah.
These align?
I check, but I'm pretty sure they do align.
They do.
They do? Okay, just checking.
Any other supervisors? Any public comment? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. B,
Thank you. The next item is consider approval of the 2024 Board of Supervisors meeting schedule for 2024. Again, it maintains the board's practice of generally meeting on the first and third Wednesdays of each month, beginning at 7:30 p.m. There are 2 months where there's a slight exception. The first is January, recognizing that you're statutorily required to meet on the Tuesday, January 2nd for purposes of reorganization. And then in October, as there was some discussion on, you would only meet on the third Wednesday of October because the second begins, I believe, Rosh Hashanah. So in recognizing that it is, as was said, that you will likely be meeting for purposes of budget and so forth, there will be other special meetings that month. So we would look for authorization to well, first look for your approval, and then we would proceed with providing public notice consistent with the statute.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the 2024 Board of Supervisors meeting schedule.
Second.
motion made by John, seconded slowly by James. Any comment from the board? Hearing
I'm
none.
not
Any
sure I'll
public-
be available for those meetings next year, Madam Chair.
Oh, you never say never. Never comment. Thank you. Any public comment? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you. Motion passes 5-0. Special seat for Colin. C,
Sure. Item C is ratify and confirm the acceptance of a professional services proposal from Cohen Law Group to represent the Township Board of Supervisors in the zoning hearing board application for Cellco doing business as Verizon Wireless.
So moved.
Second.
motion made by Dan, seconded by James. Is there any discussion from the board?
Where's all the people? Where's all the people there? The cell tower people.
There were a couple here before the meeting.
Okay.
And I explained this was just appointing somebody, so there was nothing substantive in terms of the actual, I don't know if that's the only reason, but they were here in line.
Yeah, they were in the hall.
Okay.
Any public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any?
Aye.
Okay, we got 5-0.
Just as I'll take a brief detour, just as a matter of update, I did send to you a copy of, you had authorized a prior proposal with Cohen Law Group to look at wireless facilities regulations. So those have been circulated to you for your information, and then they will begin sort of the review process at the Planning Commission level, and then ultimately come forth to you. So just as a update, they've substantially completed the work that was initially contemplated under the prior proposal.
67 pages of them.
Yeah,
I haven't gotten through that. Yeah.
It's a lot.
You can read it twice, Colin.
Yeah, that's Colin's continued work. So there you go. Item 12D, consider resolution 23-29, authorizing myself as the township manager to authorize any and all documents relating to the automated red light enforcement grant. That's grant agreement number 0611101A for improvements at the intersection of Big Oak and Makefield Roads. Again, you are the recipient of grant funds to offset the cost of that improvement. Given certain sort of circumstances surrounding design, we had requested an extension. So in order to authorize or accept the extension or have me authorize the extension, this resolution is necessary as the prior resolution authorized the prior township manager to execute those documents.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve resolution 23-29, authorizing the township manager to authorize any and all documents related to the hourly grant agreement number 0611101A, Big Oak and Makefield Roads, including but not limited to an additional time extension until December 31st, 2024.
Second.
Motion made by John, seconded by James. Any comment from the board? So I'm going to make some because my first year on the board, this was something that we worked on with the CTC. So for those following at home, that's 2018. I know that things move slowly, but this is hopefully we'll have resolution to this at some point. I want to thank the CTC for all their work, including Ginny and Keller, who are no longer even on the CTC, but put a lot of hours to try to make this happen. So hopefully.
Yeah, I don't know the full extent of the reason for the delay. Obviously, I wasn't here at that point, but we're reaching the finish line as it relates to the improvements.
Lots of different moving parts. I appreciate that. But anyway, any other comment from the board? Any public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
carries 5-0.
Then the final item that I have is your consideration of resolution 23-30 to adopt initiatives to be recognized as a Pennsylvania Audubon Council bird town. As was reported at prior meetings, I believe the township had that designation in the past. So in essence, this is a reaffirmation of those efforts and commitment to continue to look for opportunities to implement best practices consistent with programmatic requirements of the program.
I'd like to make a motion to pass resolution 23-30 to adopt initiatives to be recognized as the Pennsylvania Audubon Council's bird town.
Second.
Motion made by Dan, seconded by John. Any discussion from the board?
It's probably obvious, but the EAC is definitely in favor of this. I think representatives are here tonight if they want to speak on behalf of it. But I think it's a good thing for the township as we being recognized for positive environmental issues is always a good thing, and not for nothing promoting avian habitat is also a very good thing.
Any other comment? Any public comment? Yes.
My name is Jim Bray. I'm a member of the Environmental Council, and also I live in Lower Makefield Township on 12 Terracedale Road in Yardley. I want to thank the board very much for passing this resolution tonight. Birds are a bellwether species. When you have a healthy bird population in your town, that's highly indicative of having a healthy environment. Also, the EAC over the last several years has passed several ordinances that really have benefited the bird population in Lower Makefield Township. And one of the main ones was our native plant ordinance, which has been incredibly successful. As a matter of fact, I was talking to Alan, the current chair, recently, and we made a rough calculation that because of the native plant ordinance, which of course supports a healthy bird population, we have probably placed over 10,000 native plants in Lower Makefield Township that never would have been there before. So this has been, a very, very successful project. Also, our open space acquisitions have been very helpful as well. Again, I want to thank the board, for their action in passing this resolution tonight. Also, on a personal basis, we're approaching the end of the year, and for me, it's always been a point of reflection. And what I would like to thank tonight is all the people who are in front of me on the Board of Supervisors, our police chief, our engineer, our attorney, and our township manager. I am very, very pleased to live in Lower Makefield Township, and I am grateful and thankful for the service that all of the people in front of me have provided us over the years. This is a quality town to live in, and it's because of people like you. Again, I also extend my personal wishes for a joyous holiday season for all of you and your families as well. And not only the people in front of me, but our administrative staff, our public works staff, our parks and recreation. We have some really, really quality people here in the township, and we should all be very thankful for that. Thank you very much, and all of you have a nice holiday.
You as well.
Thank you for
Thanks.
saying that, Jim.
We also have some pretty awesome volunteers that have done a lot of work here, including members of the EAC that are in the back of the room.
And their wives.
Yes, definitely.
Is there any more public comment? And I think we're missing end quote in the fourth whereas paragraph after green living. I think there should be a quote added. So if we can get that done before we.
Yep, we can do that.
That'd be great. Okay, then with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent.
Aye.
What was that, Colin?
I just said aye.
Okay. All right. It was like a hearty high. Okay.
Well, I was going to consider a tweet, but I wanted to keep it serious.
It's no longer Twitter. Okay. Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Agenda item number 13, solicitors report.
Yes, briefly, I have two executive sessions to report about. One was on November 20th. It occurred between 6 and 7 p.m. Before a special budget meeting whose minutes were approved tonight. All board members were present along with Mr. Kratzer, myself, and for a time, Chief Caluzzi. Informational items and personnel items were discussed at the executive session, which again concluded around 7 or so right before the budget meeting commenced. There was also an executive session tonight that commenced at 6:30 p.m. 4 of the board members are present. Mr. Coyle, who is present remotely, was not present at that. Mr. Kratzer, Chief Caluzzi, and for a time, the fire director, Mr. Chamberlain, were present. Items related to information, personnel, and litigation were discussed at that executive session, which concluded just before this meeting started. So that is my report. Going to zoning, I hope there's no questions, I assume. Going to the zoning hearing board, the two matters that are before you actually are for ratification. To explain to the public, you may recall that it's been 3 weeks since our last meeting, which was November 15th. The zoning hearing board did meet last night, and the two matters that came up had to be litigated last night or heard last night. And there was an informal poll of the board taken with the information in which we requested or recommended participation in both of these items. I'll read them respectively, but we're requesting ratification of those. So first, appeal Z-23-2040, Luntz Construction in Pellegrino for a property located at 872 Henry Road, tax parcel 20-059267. The applicants requested a variance from Township Zoning Ordinance 200-23 capital B in order to construct a 358 square foot addition, which would increase the impervious surface from the existing 20.5% to 22.7%, where 18% is the allowable amount. We recommended participation because of the mitigation measures that were proposed by the applicant. And that was adopted, I believe, by the, at least I would ask that to be ratified tonight. So there'd be a vote to ratify that participation.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any public comment? That I call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
carried. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. On the second matter, Z-23-2041 Munns Construction, and Mr. and Mrs. Chud for the property located at 1807 Westover Road, tax parcel 20-043-047. Applicant is requesting a variance from Township Zoning Ordinance 200-23 capital B, again, in order to increase the existing driveway by 858 square feet, which would increase the impervious surface from the existing 24% to 28.6%, where 18% is the allowable amount. Again, we recommended participation because the applicant did, as I recall, propose some stormwater mitigation measures, which did reduce the impervious surface amount effectively down to the allowable amount, at least close to it. So we would ask for a vote to ratify the recommendation for participation.
Madam Chair, I move that the board and the township participate in appeal number Z-23-2041 Munns Construction Chud for the property located 1807 Westover Road, Yardley, Pennsylvania, tax parcel 20-043-047.
Second.
Motion made by John, seconded by Dan. Any comment from the board? Any public comment? Yes.
If I may.
Yes, please, Colin.
So just, I know I've asked this a couple times, but to be clear, participation simply means that we will be a part of the conversation, not that we are approving. We are saying that we support the granting of the appeal. Is that correct?
We don't necessarily support, we participate just to make sure that the stormwater mitigation measures that we believe are necessary, at least in these particular cases, are followed through, and that the zoning hearing board understands that the board's concerned and wants to make sure that they understand that the board, especially now, given in the last several months with the stormwater management issues, this is a position taken by the board on all these. And to distinguish this from others where we have opposed a few applications, although I think fewer than we haven't had very many lately, but occasionally we have some that somehow slip through that have no stormwater mitigation measures that are proposed. In those cases, our office has been directed to oppose those. So just to kind of give an idea what the distinction is between those positions.
Yeah.
And maybe just to add on.
In that case, please, John.
Yeah, I was going to say part of this is many years ago when we had also a series of floods, we entered into the community rating service with FEMA, and that provides people in flood zones with discounts on their flood insurance. So these people in designated flood zones, it's up to about 25%. As part of that, the township agrees to do certain things, and to make sure that we are in good stead with FEMA. The township has been actively engaged, especially anytime there's been any efforts in flood zones. So that's been multiple years that we've been doing that. But this most recent stuff where we're engaging almost many of the impervious surface is a relation to that. And it's to make sure that we can continue to mitigate stormwater management issues, but also stay in compliance with our FEMA CRS designation.
Yeah, my concern here, and you know, if participating is the right way to make sure that we're heard and negotiating, that I'm in support of participation. But you know, my reading of the flood maps may be, you know, incorrect. It's not what I do professionally. Dan, you may have a better read, but Maple Vale Drive is not in a FEMA designated, on the FEMA designated flood map for the Bucks County GIS. Neither is this property. This property is less than 800 feet from the canal, less than 800 feet from designated flood zone. And the street that the intersection is at, it's a downhill street. It's a straight shot from this yard to the canal. So I would just want those concerns to be in mind as we consider this significant increase in impervious surface above our allowable limits, given the changes that we've seen in the township over the last couple of years with flood risks.
I don't have a report on what happened last night, but I'm sure that those issues were taken into account, both by our office and also certainly by the zoning hearing board last night. So we still need to vote on that, I think.
So again, this is to approve what happened.
Ratify our participation.
Because of the timing issue. So
Correct.
With that, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Excellent. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And that is my report.
I think I voted twice there. I'm not sure. All right. I said I like aye. All right, agenda item number 15, community development.
For everybody's benefit, this matter is the request for approval of preliminary and final land development plan for 1674 Edgewood Road, otherwise more known in the vernacular as the Point. And Mr. Murphy is here along with Mr. Troilo and another representative to discuss the application and some of the issues related to it. Thank you.
Good evening and thanks. Correct. We're here tonight to present to the board what we think is the hopefully the final leg of this odyssey that's going on for multiple years. And most recently been to your planning commission, gotten a favorable recommendation of preliminary as final approval for the project, which we'll happy to review with everyone so they can see the current iteration of it. It is obviously located at what everyone knows as the Point. And it contains the more significant restoration of the Ishmael House, the reconstruction of the Quill House, and the construction of several other new freestanding multi-unit buildings. Has a total of all those units that I referenced, a total of 13, and it has 28 supporting parking spaces. It has the required design of stormwater management, and obviously we've been subject to the multiple reviews from all the different consultants, both inside and outside the township, culminating in the most recent appearance before your planning commission. So Dave's office was courteous enough to share a draft of a potential approval resolution, which I'm sure he shared with staff and others. And we've reviewed it, have no issues with it. I believe it appropriately contains all the required conditions that have been discussed over the many years that the plan has been in various stages of design. So I do think we're poised and ready for action this evening, and hopefully we can move forward thereafter. So that is a summary.
In order to move this forward, what I would propose to is read our draft letter as a motion. And obviously, if there's a motion and a second, then that will generate the discussion and question and answer. So this is only for discussion purposes at this point. There's nothing been approved yet. This is just something, as Mr. Murphy said, was to generate discussion. And this would be to grant preliminary / final land development approval of the plan, which is proposed to develop the existing parcel into 13 residential single-family units by renovating the existing Ishmael House into a single-unit dwelling, replication of the existing Quill House into two-unit dwelling, construction of one new two-story building consisting of 2 dwelling units, and construction of 2 new two-story buildings, each consisting of 4 dwelling units, with the construction of 28 on-site parking spaces. The plans consist of 1674 Edgewood Road plans consisting of 13 sheets dated June 8th, 2022, last revised September 12th, 2023, prepared by Dumac Engineering. Second, stormwater management report for the same location dated April 14th, 2023, last revised September 11th, 2023, prepared by Dumac Engineering. 3, response letter dated September 11th, 2023, is prepared by Dumac Engineering, and a soils evaluation report dated May 26th, also prepared by Dumac Engineering. These are all collectively referred to as the plan. The plan is, the approval of the plan is subject to all terms and conditions contained in the letter, which is to comply in all respects with each and every requirement of Lower Makefield Township subdivision land development ordinance, Lower Makefield Township zoning ordinance, and all the municipal ordinances and codes and regulations, and with the laws and regulations of every level of government having jurisdiction over any aspect of this property. Without limiting all the generality of the foregoing, the board will approve, if it so desires, approve the plan subject to specific compliance with the following terms. First, compliance with all terms and conditions of the review letter prepared by the township's engineer. Remington, and verdict dated October 24th, 2023, except as otherwise modified herein. 2, compliance with the recommendations of the township's traffic engineer, safe engineering outlined in the letter dated October 19th, 2023, and in accordance with Township Ordinance 121-14 and Township Plans 683 and 684, shall pay the transportation impact fee of $13,636 for the new residential units, which are anticipated to generate a total of 4 new trips during the weekday afternoon peak hour. Next, compliance with the recommendations of the Township's Citizens Traffic Commission per its email transmission dated October 3rd, 2023. Next, compliance with the recommendations of the Bucks County Planning Commission dated September 22nd, 2023, regarding the basis for waivers, historic preservation, and review by the Township's HARB, native plantings, tree protection, and installation of sidewalks. Next, compliance with the determinations and recommendations of the Township's engineer and further discussion regarding the feasible extension of the sidewalk along Yardley Langhorne Road to the edge of the property line, with the proposed drainage being relocated accordingly. If the sidewalk cannot not be feasibly extended, then the applicant shall pay a fee in lieu of installation of the sidewalk extension as determined by the township at the rate of $50 per linear foot in accordance with section 178-47. Next, installation of a more significant buffer pervious surface around the trees located near the dumpster area as approved by the township and the township engineer. Next, if required, the applicant shall obtain a necessary highway occupancy permit from the appropriate governmental agency regarding emergency access onto Yardley Langhorne Road, which is also known as State Road 2049. Next, as required, you shall comply and pay all otherwise required fees required by section A205 of the ordinance unless noted otherwise, as determined by the township prior to the recording of the final plan. Next, if applicable, you must obtain any and all necessary approvals from any and all other applicable governmental entities having jurisdiction over this project, including but limited to the Bucks County Conservation District and the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, including without limitation, excuse me, to any requirements for the issuance of the otherwise required MPDES permit. And 10, payment of the required fee in lieu of dedication of recreation land in the amount of $51,640 for the 10 new dwelling units, calculated at $5,164 per unit. In addition to the above, the Township Board of Supervisors would grant waivers. These are the requested waivers from the following requirements of the ordinance. 1, waiver from section 178-12.b of the ordinance allowing preliminary and final submissions to be consolidated into one submission. Next, waiver from section 178-13 to not perform or provide the procedures for plans as otherwise specified. Next, a waiver from section 178-19 to not require the submission package as otherwise specified or required and instead is stipulated by the township. Next, a waiver from section 178-20.c6 to allow 1 foot contours. Next, waiver from section 178-20.c9 do not require showing all existing features within 200 feet of the tract. Next, a waiver from section 178-40.a to permit existing right-of-way and cartway widths to remain. Next, a waiver from section 178-57.e to not require curbing around the parking area. Next, waiver from section 178-57 capital G to allow 0.87 feet between the building, excuse me, and the parking area where 5 feet is otherwise required. Next, waiver from section 178-80 to not require the landscape plan to be prepared, signed and certified by a registered landscape architect. Next, waiver from section 178.81 capital D to allow street trees to be located more than 15 feet from the right of way. Next, waiver from section 178-85 capital H 4 small d to permit payment of a fee in lieu of installation of otherwise required replacement trees as determined by the township. Next, a waiver from section 178.93.f3 small c to permit use of 8-inch, 12-inch, and 15-inch drainage pipes in lieu of otherwise required minimum 18-inch drainage pipes. Excuse me. Next, a waiver from section 178.93F3 small h to permit a minimum 1 foot pipe cover in lieu of otherwise required 2 feet pipe. And finally, a waiver from section 178-113 to permit payment of fee in lieu of installation and planting of 4 remaining required street trees. And those are all the conditions and waivers. So a motion will be appropriate if so desired for discussion.
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Motion made by James, seconded by myself. open the matter up to the board for discussion.
And Mr. Murphy, I did read all those conditions and the waivers correctly into the record. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Any discussion from the board?
Just so the board is aware, Joe Fiacco, the traffic engineer, is also online at this point to the extent that there's questions related to his review or traffic.
Thanks, Dave. I meant to say that and I forgot. Appreciate it. Hearing no discussion from the board, is there any public I apologize, Dan?
Sure. In looking at the waiver requests, I think there's still several comments from various boards and commissions, including the HARB, that I don't think have been completely finalized. So I would not be in favor of the first waiver request. I would be in favor of allowing for preliminary but not final on this today, so that it goes back to folks like the HARB and the EAC, who have been pretty adamant about the fact that they need to review it one more time. Let's see, another waiver that was requested. Let's see. Curious about why we're less than a foot from a building with a parking area, when our minimum requirement's 5 feet. That doesn't seem safe. I think if we're going to require landscape plans, we should have them completed by a registered landscape architect. Those are important from it. One, to make sure that it's done correctly, and two, to make sure that it meets all requirements. That's a pretty common one to not provide a waiver for. And then I think I'm a little concerned about not providing the required cover over our various pipes to provide protection. Only providing a foot instead of 2 is concerning.
That's waiver number 13 you're talking about, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And
then the other items, I don't know that they're waivers, but there's been a lot of, this was granted a variance for much greater density than what is allowed by zoning. So that brings up concerns about potential for increased foot traffic in this area. This is supposed to be a pedestrian friendly zoning overlay. That's the whole point of this, of how this zoning overlay is there, in addition to obviously historic designation. So those are the two primaries. And then when you have greater density, that leads to more foot traffic. So Mr. Fiacco, I'll ask you a question in a second. Potentially more car traffic. And then when you have greater density and what's allowed, that's also potentially for more stormwater management issues. Not a big fan of basically underground cisterns for most of these things. Under pavement, I know there's been a lot of comments and requests for pervious pavement. There's been some responses that pervious pavement is not something that can be managed in a parking lot. I know that's false. That's what pervious pavement is designed for parking lot areas, and does provide a benefit. And we're trying to promote that with all of our stormwater regs. But for that reason, I don't think it's ready for prime time for final. I do think it's ready for preliminary. Mr. Fiacco, in terms of there's some discussion about not putting sidewalks in certain areas if they don't fit. I think we need to work that out and try and make them fit before we approve something, given what the focus is for this area. And I know there's been some discussion about concerns I'm looking at the point, certain turning radii or certain sight lines at the point. So I'm wondering if you could address the sightline issues that we've heard from various committees, as well as pedestrian access to the site from multiple directions.
Joe, you might be on mute if you're speaking. We can't hear you.
All right, got it. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, thanks. I'm on my phone, so I apologize. Yeah, the sight line, I'm comfortable with the sight lines at the point. I was out there when someone pulls out to the intersection, there is plenty of sight distance in both to the right and to the left. Relative to the pedestrian circulation, we had recommended exactly what's shown on the concept plan there to move that pedestrian crossing to the intersection of the driveway, giving the maximum amount of sight distance back to the point or the the Y intersection. So it looks like this concept is complying with our recommendation.
Joe,
Relative to sidewalks, I'm not sure where the concern is about what sidewalks can't be put in. It looks to me, I'm looking on the concept plan. If somebody's walking along Edgewood, they can, it looks like a sidewalk connection pretty much around the entire property. So I'm not sure where they're saying they may not be able to install sidewalk.
there was in one, shoot, did I close it? One of the comment letters, maybe you can reference this.
We talked about, I think we resolved it, but.
That issue has been resolved. We came up with a concept. We ran it through the township engineer, and I think that issue's been resolved.
Can you describe it? Can you describe what you're doing to resolve it? Just one.
We're essentially ringing the site with sidewalk. The issue that you were discussing in regard to the sidewalk at the extreme, as it's oriented on the top end, was a discharge point. That's kind of the collection point for the site, and it was a discharge point of stormwater. We were running the sidewalk and then discharging the stormwater. We came up with an alternative layout where we're able to get the stormwater underneath the sidewalk via piping, and we were able to extend the sidewalk to the property.
Is that, can you accomplish that and still get the 2 feet of cover?
No, and actually the 2 feet of cover is somewhat obsolete. All the manufacturers essentially recommend 1 foot nowadays, so we would comply with all the manufacturers' recommendations for the cover.
What pipe type are you putting in?
I'm sorry, what's that?
What pipe type are you putting in?
HDP.
Okay. And is that emergency only on the north side of the parking lot, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you putting in to block that from regular traffic?
That'd be up to the fire marshal, but usually it's some method of bollards and chain. But that's really up to the fire.
Okay. Given where we are, I think aesthetics are an issue to be considered in that specific area. So we should probably take a look at that. That's not a deal breaker.
That actually was one of our comments. It looks like a full service driveway. So we were suggesting if it was intended to be an emergency only, it should be more designed as emergency only so that the emergency personnel know that they can get in, but the traveling public isn't tempted to go in and out.
Yeah. Is that sort of pull out there on the north side? Is that where you're putting a dumpster, or what's that for? That's the back end for the dumpster. Okay. I'm curious, I'm thinking out loud. Does it make him? Oh, can you get closer to your mic? When you speak, sorry, it's usually me he's talking to get closer to the mic. So I thought I think I could get any closer in my case. In terms of making it seem like it's a emergency only access, could it make sense to, and maybe make it a little less impervious, could it make sense to put in an emergency access where it's the grid like material with grass that grows in and all that stuff?
So when we went to planning commission, this issue came up, and basically we said we could do whatever the township wanted us to do. We were more than willing to put in usually the common company's grass pavers.
Yeah.
With the caveat that since it is going out to the PennDOT road, PennDOT might very well require it to be asphalt at least for 10 or 20 feet back from the edge of the cartway. But if the township wishes us to do grass pavers in that area, we're perfectly willing to do it, depending on PennDOT.
And because that's where you have your dumpster, I don't know if you'd be making those turns on those grass pavers regularly, or if you'd have to keep that per pavement, right?
The way that the turning works for a trash truck is it pulls in forward, picks up the dumpster, backs up a little bit, and then it can swing into the striped island to the left,
Mhm.
and then essentially do a K-turn and then pull out.
And then what is our ordinance requirement for setback for a dumpster from a property line? Are they compliant with that?
I'm not aware of a specific requirement.
Uh,
I don't have the dimension off the top of my head, but we
Um,
didn't have any restriction of the ordinance to what they have proposed.
And the reason for my question is that the I don't know if he's here tonight, but the doctor's house next door obviously he's been very concerned about his buffer, which I understand.
So at the
Um,
planning commission, originally to the right of dumpster, that was paved. So based on the planning commission's recommendations, what we have shown on this plan, that area is now grass. And additionally, we have pulled the dumpster 5 additional feet away from that property line.
So what are you like 10 feet maybe?
About 10.
Okay. Is there any screening of the dumpster?
Yes, the little bluish dots, that's the resolution's hard to see on that, but that would be landscaping.
Okay.
And additionally, usually the dumpsters would have an enclosure. So it would be
So it's
essentially a dual layer.
So it might look like a fake wooden fence or something like that around it, something like that. Okay. I've seen plenty of those. So,
And that was one of our comments on our letter to demonstrate the circulation would work.
get that, Joe. And then can you point me to the pedestrian crosswalk that was moved, just to make sure I heard Mr. Fiacco.
It wasn't so much moved as extended. It was right here. The sidewalk. Oh, the crosswalk? Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
The crosswalk is right here.
That's what I was looking at. I was just making sure that.
Yeah.
And then if folks are at the point itself, what I call the point, so furthest top is north, right? So furthest west point of the whole thing. How are they able to get to the north side of the street? I think it's the skate shops right there or something like that. If they're trying to get that way, how do pedestrians get over there?
The side up here to the north.
Yes.
We do not currently propose a crossing. There's no sidewalks or anything on that side of the street. We don't propose a crossing there.
So anyone that lives there, but we do have sidewalk on the north. If they're going to get a skateboard, and assuming they follow all pedestrian traffic rules and they use existing stuff, they would cross to the south, follow that sidewalk up towards Di Lorenzo's, I guess, over there, and then
I would argue that we're making their life easier. They currently would have to extend the whole length of our property with no sidewalks. They could, continue what they're currently be doing, but then be able to walk on sidewalks that we're constructing.
Yeah, well, you're also following our zoning, so that's the key. And then I think what else we had. So density pre-variance, what was the allowable area? 12? Was it 10 or 12 units? Development units? 13.
With the restoration of the Ishmael house and the reconstruction.
So 13 was approved, or 13 is what?
13 was approved by the zoning.
No. That required a variance though. So what was our
The zoning
base?
hearing board.
Yeah. So what's our base allowable without a variance? Is it 8?
I think it's 8, but I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Okay. So I think the plan said that was looking for 17 or something like that, but we're actually doing 13.
Years ago, there was a plan that called for that number of units, but over the various iterations of the plan, the units continue to drop. And at the time that the zoning hearing board the second one was submitted, I think the request was greater, and the zoning hearing board asked us to further reduce the density to 13. Provided that one of those units was the reconstruction and restoration of Ishmael.
Yeah. The only reason I'm asking is in your, what I'll call your bulk requirements table on the plan, it says 17.1 development units per acre is what's proposed.
I think we're getting number of dwelling units and density confused because the lot is not exactly 1 acre. They don't agree with each other. So if the lot was exactly 1 acre and we had 13 units, our density would be 13 dwelling units per acre. Since our lot is less than 1 acre, we're proposing 13 units, but that calculation results in a density of 17.1 dwelling units per acre.
Okay. Whereas the required is 12
dwelling.
So the numbers are, it's DU versus DU. They happen to be similar meanings, slightly different, and numbers are similar, but slightly different. Okay.
Got it.
I got you.
Okay.
All right. I think those are all my questions and comments. I appreciate your responses.
John?
Joe, good to see you, even though you're a little square there, jiggly on the iPhone, but you assess the traffic situation there. You're comfortable with the sight lines, huh? Oh, okay. Couple questions. We move the crosswalk. Have you looked at all about, is there a need for any traffic calming or are there traffic calming effects here for speed on both the north and south part of the parcel?
A good question. One of the things we did was collected data on the two roads, and we believe the speeds of the vehicle there, again, where they are proposing that crosswalk at the driveway provides adequate sight distance for that crossing based on the speeds that we monitored and counted.
Well, and you've moved it further from the actual point, right? So that gives people more time. That makes sense. I'm also thinking about this just in terms of when I drive it. I tend to slow down naturally because of the way that it's not a traditional sort of driving experience. So I'm not sure that anything else additional is needed there. I'm hopeful that that behavior will stand. And you observed that behavior, meaning the people generally were at, what was the 80 percentile speed?
Yeah, I don't have them in front of me. But again, it was pretty much right at that, it was about 250 feet or again, approximately about 250 feet, I think, from coming from the intersection, approaching a theoretical person beginning to cross the crosswalk.
It's what?
Speed study in Langhorne Yardley Road confirmed the 85th percentile is 39 miles per hour.
39 miles per hour. Okay. Still a little fast, but
that is along the other road.
Right. Yeah, that's on
the longer side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's on the north, the road coming from the north side, not the south.
yeah.
Yeah, we did Edgewood. Do you have that handy, Dave?
That's the only reference I see to the.
I think it's in paragraph 3. The data indicates 85th percentile speeds of 33 miles per hour.
Oh, okay.
I reject your font, Joe. Your font is.
I'm sorry. Yeah, 35. Yes, paragraph 3 at the
That-
bottom of
that sounds
bottom of
right,
page
yeah.
2. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That does seem to, like I said, my initial traffic concerns are there. And I think, we're still going to be going through over the next year or so increases in traffic in that general area. This isn't going to add that many trips. So I don't see this as a contributor to overall traffic. What was it? You said 8 or something a day. It's not, it's de minimis. But we should be looking at this as it relates to other stuff coming online in the area traffic wise. Moving on to the actual buildings for a second. Did Disability Advisory Review Board look at this at all or no?
Not that I'm aware of.
No?
Did you say?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yes, Mr. Majewski?
Good evening. Typically, we would send that to the Disability Advisory Board once they actually submit building permits so they could look at the actual buildings and the accessibility.
Okay. So along those lines, one of the apartments is on the first floor, right? Of the number, there's one of the number of the apartments is on the first floor. So that would be in theory accessible for folks, right? Can you tell me so of the apartments, what are the types of apartments, what they'd roughly rent for, or so I have a sense of that?
So they're envisioned as 2-bedroom, 1-bath, pretty much a open floor plan. They're all less than 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
We don't have any rental rates worked out yet. And upon construction costs and other factors,
yeah.
it'd be in line with other things in the area. Obviously, we'd have to be competitive in the market.
Okay. Question on plan sheet 2, there was a discussion about a crater. Can you tell me about the crater and what your mitigation strategy is around that? Because there, is there a building that's going to be on top of where the crater was? I believe it was a sunken septic tank?
We believe it's a sunken septic tank. That's what we anticipate is there.
Okay. Where is that located on the plan set so people can see?
It is roughly about here.
Okay. Is that building going to be on where the sinkhole is?
Even if it's not a sinkhole, it's a septic tank that we think was buried and then the lid has cracked and fallen in. So it's not like a sinkhole into the ground with limestone or something like that.
Okay.
So it's an isolated thing, and the foundations for the house would naturally be lower than that anyway.
Okay. All right. Just checking on that because again, I'm not an engineer on that one. Last thing, just I'm of the preliminary approval mindset on the impervious surface for the parking. It reminded me of my 2013 campaign opponent, a gentleman named Pete Stainthorpe, who's no longer with us, who served the board honorably for many, many years. In 2014, he actually advocated for an ordinance that we have 395, which really pushes for impervious surface credits. And what I would say is I would strongly look at impervious surface for that parking lot in terms of how to handle stormwater management. You know, when I go to the Makefield school, I've seen it work, like where you just see a torrential downpour and then you can see the difference between pervious and impervious pavement. And given where you're at there, I know that there's probably a maybe not modest 10 to 15% increase on that. And obviously the O&M, I understand, but the benefits that long run that you might get there are something I think would be good for you and for the community at large in terms of stormwater management. And I know that may not be a majority opinion, but I think it's one that, you know, we have to kind of, July 15th really changed people's thinking about all this stuff. We're going to be tougher going forward on anything stormwater related. And anytime we can get additional tools in our arsenal, that would be one I would be looking for. So I want you to kind of give that some hard thought. I know that was something that had been discussed in the planning commission or prior, but had fallen by the wayside. And it's, we're looking at everything we can to help improve stormwater management here. So that's one I strongly think about, and I want to honor the memory of the gentleman I ran against hard 2013 who did beat me, nice guy. And that passed unanimously. So it was a very different board in terms of political representation, but they all were strong supporters of impervious pavement in a way to deal with stormwater management. So not at all a partisan issue. So those are my thoughts. If the maker of the motion would be open to what Supervisor Grenier said about providing preliminary approval as opposed to preliminary and final, I would be comfortable with that. I don't know who the maker of the motion is.
It was me.
Okay.
Is the applicant in looking to do any additional preliminary plans? Or
Yeah, we were
final?
fully expecting to be a preliminary final application. That's why we sought it from the beginning. I don't think the plans are going to change. I think the level of detail we have incorporated meets all the final plan requirements. So our view is that there's nothing further for us to do vis-a-vis the plan that would suggest the need to go back and go through the whole process all over.
What version is this for you guys? I know it's 10 maybe.
Try not to be.
Sure. I'm not trying to instigate you.
I'll defer to John to see what.
Yeah. Do you know what version this is of? Not the number of versions matter, but just to get an idea of where.
CT has been kind of beating this project around for 5 years.
About 10 years.
Yeah.
Between me and John, we've probably done, and I don't mean exact, 100 different iterations, buildings, groupings, the parking, egress, and we've been in front of the board.
CT, I'm sorry. He's motioning to make sure the mic's near you.
Oh, you're closer to the microphone, yes.
I'm sorry about that. So between me and John internally, we have done over 100 iterations of this plan. We've changed it. It's changed the groupings of the building, changed the parking, changed the egress, changed the sidewalks. In front of the boards, we have done how many? 5 or 6 iterations, starting with the 17 units, working our way down to the 13. No sidewalks on Yardley Langhorne Road. We added the sidewalks to Yardley Langhorne Road. So there's been a lot of time and effort put in this.
And just remind me, I think the last one you did have approval on from this board, correct?
Earlier version we did.
Okay.
And I would just say, I've been doing this for 23 years, and by far, this plan is more designed by the township than any project I've ever worked on. Basically, every piece of the layout was given to us by boards. We didn't sit down and like say, hey, we like this here, like we want to do this. It really is. This plan has been designed by committee essentially through the township.
If there was something legitimately that we needed to do to revise the plan, I would not sit here and suggest otherwise. I mean, but I don't think there's anything that we haven't dealt with, that we haven't agreed upon already, that is either reflected in the plan or would be a condition of approval. So I really don't think there's anything left for us to do that would suggest the need to go back through the process yet again.
Okay. That was all I had. Thanks.
Colin, do you have anything?
Yeah, so thank you all for your time and for coming before us again. I was on the planning commission. I did vote to approve the plans and recommend approval to the board. And I would keep that recommendation to approve tonight. The only thing that I would say is in the closing of that planning commission meeting, the applicant had stated they had concerns about pervious pavement within a short period of time. If we don't vacuum it, it becomes the same as regular asphalt. I would point out that the Makefield Elementary School parking lot was installed 11 years ago. It is still functioning properly after those 11 years. I don't see any way that I can try and force you to switch to a pervious pavement, but I would strongly recommend that you make that consideration for the benefit of the township and of the individuals who are going to be living in these dwelling units as you move forward. That is my only comment at this time.
You want to take a couple minutes to, yeah, go ahead. Sure, absolutely. Yep.
Step in your office.
Should we take a
Good.
5-minute recess?
We can take a 5-minute recess, the musical interlude.
Yeah, we need the incidental music. Yeah, Bolero. Yeah, but that's not a subject. Yeah, exactly. Rock Zarathustra play. I think Richard Strauss, right? You did. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, usually I would get you on the old stuff you got. Well, anything after 1990. And I like them because I think they're, you know, they honor that, you know, yeah.
You forgot to unshare a screen.
Second level. No, put in all the charts. Yes, one day. Hope it doesn't rain. Yeah. Swamped by ARP.
I saw the Kingston Trio.
Yeah, you did, because I said Everly Brothers, you said Kingston Trio, yes, you did.
Did I hear John yell my name?
Are you saying something, Colin?
What was that?
Oh, no.
I
Okay.
just asked, I thought I heard John yell my name.
No,
Oh,
no.
no. We're talking the Stones.
I think we're back and the music conversation will stop.
Right, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to Cam about it. We're good with doing porous paving in the parking lot.
Okay, so that would be just, I have to add that as a condition, obviously, so the parking lot will be constructed entirely of porous pavement, is that?
Yeah.
Where you're, okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, first of all. From a process perspective, before this isn't to slow things up, just from an engineering review on the design, right? Obviously it's a change.
Plans will be revised.
Plans will be revised, reviewed by the engineer.
Post-approval to show the design, which is admittedly different than the current.
Right.
To reflect the
So it's a conditional approval upon the engineer signing off.
Correct.
Okay. Making sure we get process down.
Yep, I'll try to what I'll do is I'll recirculate the letter, well, assuming it passes that way, and I'll make sure that the wording is acceptable. I have a up to 15 days, not that I'll take it, to do that, so.
And then from this is engineers talking, but what qualifies as pervious or porous pavement? Make, if there's a continuum that where everyone's square on what is and versus what isn't, that's all. It's usually pretty straightforward, but
My first step would check with RVE. A lot of times the township engineers have details for that. They don't have a detail for it. We do have a detail that we use, but first step would be.
Yeah.
We'll give it to Isaac and review it. It's fine.
All right, with that, is there any public comment? Hearing none, call the question on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, sorry.
Yes,
If
sir.
I can just get clarification, the motion as it stands is preliminary and final contingent on the town's engineer's acceptance of the previous payment, or preliminary only? I lost track.
It's
That is correct.
Final, preliminary and final with the pervious pavement.
Correct.
Condition.
Thank you. I
Yes.
apologize.
No,
All
no,
right, no.
no,
I
no.
tend to-
We appreciate
I'm
you
going.
you stepping in. So just to be clear, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, so the motion passes 5-0.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
I
you so
will,
much.
I'll get that letter out soon
Yeah,
with
thanks.
that information, so, all right.
Thank you. Okay, we are,
For the public purposes, when it comes to final building permits, you have one more trip before the HARB for treatments and all that stuff, everything else, just so people know that still happens.
thank you
Correct.
again. Enjoy your holidays. Thank you. All right, with that, we're up to agenda item number 16, supervisors report. I do not have any update, but I will note that we are patiently awaiting information about potential options for 501(c) so that I can report back to the ad hoc property committee on that. So,
We are working on that. My partner Barbara Kirk, who also serves on the Pennsbury Manor Board, is familiar with some of the public sector 501(c)(3). She and I and Mr. Kratzer have been discussing that and moving forward on that. So yes.
excellent. Thank you so much. John?
I was gonna say, actually, Madam Chair, on the ad hoc property committee, I know that there's probably an end time for that group, but there are some folks there that could be very helpful on an implementation committee, which I think the board could, consider going forward. Because they have done excellent work, and we want to make sure that we continue to get that across the finish line.
Absolutely.
As for my supervisor reports, most of my committees will be meeting after tonight. And so I don't have anything to report.
Thank you, James.
Zoning hearing board met last night and they listened to two aforementioned hearings, and that's all I have to report. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan.
For me, the EAC will meet next week. The other one, the seniors, so everyone's aware, did reach out to me regarding the Park and Rec Board Advisory Board's proposed fee schedule. They have some concerns about that, so I just advised them that the Park and Rec Board is meeting on the 12th, and that since they weren't there at the last meeting, that they could go there to express their concerns and any guidance they might have. So Supervisor Coyle, you'll probably be seeing them at the Park and Rec Board meeting.
Look forward to it.
And we'll see what they say, and they'll come back to us on the 20th as we look at all the other budget items. That's it for me.
Thank you, Dan. And how about you, Colin?
I'm in the same boat as Supervisor Lewis. My boards are meeting later in the month, but I do look forward to rejoining my friends in Planning Commission next Monday and the Parks and Recreation Board on Tuesday. I will note the Parks and Recreation budget proposal includes some significant changes, so I encourage citizens to come out and have your say.
Excellent. Okay, then with that, we're on to 17. Is there any other business?
There is none, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Then
I have
no,
two items.
none from it.
Sorry, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
go ahead, Colin.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
You only have one meeting left, Colin.
I don't know. I'm just getting it all in. The first is that tomorrow is the first night of Hanukkah. I would like to wish a happy Hanukkah to all of the individuals and families throughout the township who will be lighting the candles. I hope it is a joyous and peaceful occasion for all. The second is I'd like to share a little bit that I learned this past weekend. There was an incident in the township with an individual who had stolen a vehicle. And Saturday night, they came to my home and attempted to see what was happening with the condition of my vehicles. And in the aftermath, I've learned a couple of things. First, far too many people I know leave their vehicles unlocked in their driveways overnight with wallets or purses visible. Please, 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 for your own sake and safety, stop doing that. Second, after seeing the individual on the camera, before calling the township police, I went out and investigated to check and make sure my neighbors were okay. That individual later committed a violent carjacking. That was very stupid. So don't be me. Call the Lower Makefield Township Police immediately. The response was very fast, incredibly professional, and very thorough. So I want to thank the Township Police for all the work that they do in keeping us safe, and just tell my fellow citizens, don't be stupid. Just call the police. That's what they're there for.
I'm glad that
That's
you're
it.
safe. I hope that everyone is safe. And we all join with you and wishing happy Hanukkah to all of our friends and neighbors. Thank you. All right, we are on to agenda item number 18, which is appointment and reappointments. Yes, please.
I'd like to move to reappoint Lisa Hulcher to the Disability Advisory Board.
Second.
Should we do them all at once, or is it just?
I can do them all at once.
If we could, please.
Okay, I'd like to reappoint Michelle Williams to the Disability Advisory Board and Mr. Pat Frayne to the Golf Committee.
Second all of those nominations.
Thank you very much. Motion made by John, seconded by James. Is there any discussion by the board?
And just for clarification, these are all reappointments.
Yep.
Correct. Any public comment?
Can vouch for all three.
Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you for your continued good works. You'll be getting a letter from the township shortly. And then public comment. We're up to agenda item number 19. Welcome back to the microphone. Please state your name again.
Thank you. Hi, April Boyd-Clower, resident Lower Makefield Township. I just want to thank Chief Galuzzi for putting our speed limit sign over by Highland. Thank you. We see people kind of slowing down a little bit and kind of jamming on the brakes when they get there. So I just want to thank you for putting that up there. We know it has to move, but thanks a lot. That was all.
Thank you. And you could sneak that in when you're up next time. So you don't. Okay. Okay. But thank you for staying till the end. Any other public comment? Hearing none, there being no further business before the board this evening, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. And again, happy Hanukkah.
Thanks.
Night.
10 o'clock.
Right on.